Hello everyone, today we'll talk to Dr. Bastiaan Willems, Postdoctoral Fellow of Modern European History at the University College London, who recently published the book Violence and Defeat, the Wehrmacht on German Soil. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we will talk today about basically beyond the Volkssturm, because we have total war on German soil, and particularly about in East Prussia, how the German civilians were used in the defense of East Prussia. So we all know about Volkssturm, but apparently the Wehrmacht, you could say, went beyond that. You mentioned in your book the so-called Festungsdienst, literally translated fortress service. Could you explain what that meant and encompassed?
Yeah, I'd like to go back a little bit before that, because the Festungsdienst, and we will come back to that, like this comes into play only in February 1945. But if you go back to the previous summer, to the summer of 1944, this is when the Red Army arrives at Germany's easternmost province, which is East Prussia, which is what my book is about. And here you see that the Wehrmacht, together with the Nazi party, starts to use German civilians and see how that goes. Like, does this work? So the Wehrmacht asks the party, could you try to see if you could rally the people to contribute in the defense? And they do that. Like, they start to construct like the Ostwall. So this is a large series of defenses that goes actually like throughout Eastern Germany. You see that people are digging defensive positions. And this is very successful. Like, hundreds of thousands of people, of German people, are contributing in this defense. Unsurprisingly, also helped by forced labor, like some Polish forced labor, Lithuanian forced labor, Jewish forced labor is also used to make these defensive positions. But in the end, the conclusion is, yes, German civilians are actually quite capable of constructing defensive positions. Now, of course, if you know anything about the Wehrmacht, and I think a lot of us do, you know that this is also what happened in the years before. The Wehrmacht had always been using a local manpower to help in the construction, like on the Eastern Front. So before that, that was, of course, always forced. So you would have people in Lithuania or in Belarus who were forced to make defensive positions. This was less forced. It was still a compulsory. So like, it was to some extent forced, but obviously you cannot punish people like too strictly because they are like your fellow Germans. But they used very much like the same means of coercing people into contributing to like constructing defensive positions. So now, in January 1945, after this construction has been organized, the Soviet winter offensive commences, and it also commences in East Prussia. So what happens? The Soviets advance, of course, the Red Army advances to Festung Königsberg, Fortress Königsberg. The city is besieged, is encircled, and inside of this city are roughly 200,000 people in late January 1945, when the city is encircled. Now, you have a very large civilian population in the city. What the Fortress Command decides, and the Fortress Command consists of people who are military people and people of the party, like they work together at the highest level at the Fortress Command. They say, let's establish like Festungsdienst, they call it, so like fortress service. And what does this mean? Every civilian, and they state emphatically, man, woman, and child, so everyone in the fortress has to work 4 hours per day. Basically, they have to earn the right to be defended. So here you see that young boys, sometimes as young as 8, they are asked to hold grenades, for example, pass artillery coordinates. We know that some older grandmothers, for example, they have to sew ammunition pouches. The Volkssturm is also supplemented with women, like mend socks, for example, of women who repair the uniforms. And all this is done to free up soldiers for the front. So every soldier who doesn't have to mend the uniform, every soldier who doesn't have to hold grenades is one soldier you can put more on the front. So in this way, the fortress becomes stronger and stronger, defended by like real soldiers.
So it's basically supplementing the whole supply and service system of the Wehrmacht, even communications if they pass artillery coordinates around.
Yeah, so like they try their hardest basically to have civilians play a very active role in the defense. So this is really like total war at its absolute pinnacle. There lies nothing beyond this. Like the dividing line between what constitutes a civilian and what constitutes a soldier, it really almost completely disappears in this final stage of the war. And this is with the agreement of both the party and the army itself.
So how was it formalized? Was this a law, a decree, or just a local command?
This is here. Every city has their own approach. It is always quite a radical approach. Whenever you're in a fortress, it doesn't matter if this is Königsberg, it's Breslau, or all other major fortresses. They all have similar command structures with the fortress commander who has a staff at his disposal. In Königsberg, what they do, it's pretty simple. The only way to get food ration coupons is if you contribute to the defense of the fortress. So you don't even have to strictly regulate it by means of guns. It's just if you don't contribute, you don't get your ration cards. So you have to contribute, otherwise you just don't get food. So this is the way that the military commanders like formalize this fortress service.
And how was the relationship between the party and the military at this point? Or at this location, better, because I know, like, initially the Volkssturm was set out to be basically a militia of the party, but in the end, from what I know from my research, is basically, or not my research, what I read from others, is that the Wehrmacht took over most parts, although is originally established to be next to the Wehrmacht. So what was the case here in East Prussia and especially Königsberg?
I think East Prussia is the province where the Wehrmacht has the biggest impact on the Volkssturm. Like in East Prussia, the Volkssturm units become completely integrated in the military command structure. So military commanders, divisional commanders, have control over the different Volkssturm units. These Volkssturm units, they still tend to be controlled by like party members, but these party members, they are now part of a military staff. All party members participating in it tend to have military training as well. Like we tend to see them as like two separate things. For example, in Königsberg, you have Ernst Wagner, who's like the Kreisleiter, which is the highest official present at that moment in Königsberg. And not only is he a party member, he was also a former soldier of the 1st Infantry Division. And the 1st Infantry Division is the division that ends up defending Königsberg as well. So he knows the members of that division long before he starts defending the city as a Volkssturm commander. So in East Prussia, there is no indoctrination along the lines of ideology. There's weapons training only. In other parts of Germany, there is sometimes some like a party attempts to indoctrinate the Volkssturm members along the lines of ideology. That does not necessarily happen in East Prussia. Here they are immediately incorporated in the military command structure. And that is also very necessary because when the Volkssturm is established in October 1944, the Red Army is already on East Prussian soil. So immediately the Volkssturm has to contribute to the defense of their province. So this means there's very little time to do anything else but the very rudimentary weapons training only, and this also allows eventually commanders to completely integrate them in the military command structure.
I read a bit from Yelton, who wrote, I think, one of the most recent books on the Volkssturm, and he noted that, like, especially in East Prussia and on the Eastern Front, the Volkssturm was quite effective when it was integrated with the Wehrmacht, whereas on the Western Front it was less the case. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, absolutely. These units, they were deployed with an absolute disregard for their lives, basically. So these are 60-year-old boys. These are 60-year-old older men, and they are not fighting fit. They are not soldiers. They're soldiers really only in name. And very often they don't have proper clothing. They don't have proper weapons, but they are still deployed completely at the front line. But this means that on occasion they are also quite successful. Also because they are such unknown units, the Soviets don't exactly know what they have in front of them. So suddenly you encounter, as a Soviet commander, you encounter a resistance where you don't expect it. And now you have to make your best assessment at that time. So, like, are we going to encounter this completely unknown unit? Like, we don't know how strong it is, or are we going to see what it is and then act on it? And because at this point, like, the Red Army's command has like evolved spectacularly. It's just a good fighting force that is not willing to take massive risks, especially knowing that this is the last stage of the war. Like, sometimes they make the decision to divert their path, for example. So as a result, Volkssturm units are at times quite successful at defending their positions.
That's very interesting, and I never thought about the aspect of that the Red Army was not aware of what it sometimes was facing when it comes up to Volkssturm units. Actually, it's a very interesting point I've never seen before, and definitely gives more depth to the stuff about Volkssturm I read in Yelp. And also on the whole total war thing, I think we have now a better understanding of the whole integration. On, you can see basically Volkssturm, and then the next you would say is Festungsdienst, and before that it was basically the Hitlerjugend using the flag defenses and all the other aspects. So you probably can see a continuous militarization of German civilian population throughout the war. Thank you very much, Bastiaan. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.